Welcome to the Saturday Cup of Joe podcast. This podcast is dedicated to EAS employees of the U.S. Postal Service and members of the National Association of Postal Supervisors. So, pour yourself a cup of coffee and join us for today's episode. And now, here's your host, Robert Wakefield.
Good morning, Branch 32, and good morning to our EAS friends across the country. Welcome to the Saturday Cup of Joe podcast. It's presented by the Nashville Post Office Credit Union. I'm your host, Robert Wakefield, president of Branch 32. That's right. Thank you. Thank you so much. All right, it's great to have you here. So let's go ahead and pour that first cup. For 100 years, that's 36,525 days, 876,600 hours, and over 52 million minutes, the Nashville Post Office Credit Union has been a beacon of financial support for the postal community. Since 1925, we've been here for life's big moments and everyday triumphs. Each day, hour, and minute, we are committed to our mission of people helping people. Join us and be a part of that tradition. The Nashville Post Office Credit Union. People helping people since 1925. So for today's first cup, it's, it happened. I'm shocked. I can't believe it happened, but, it did. This very week, the PMG, the Postmaster General Louis DeJoy, announced to the USPS Board of Governors to begin the search for his replacement. He is stepping down as Postmaster General. Now, Postmaster Generals, they come and go. I think it was a total of 9 PMGs during my career. Of 35 years, I had about 9 of them. I wanted to go back and look to see who they were because I don't remember all of them. And the first one I certainly don't remember because I just started. He came on in January of 1986. I came on in March of 1986. His name was Albert V. Casey. And back in 1986, I was a PTF clerk and a PTF carrier. We could do both back then. Then on March the 1st, 1988, this guy I do remember, Anthony Frank, became the Postmaster General. But the one that probably sticks out more than any of them, as far as personality, with the exception of DeJoy, is the guy that was hired on July the 6th, 1992, and that's Marvin Runyon. For those of you who was working in the Postal Service during his time, wasn't that a trip? He came from business just like DeJoy did and tried to run the Postal Service in a way that, it just didn't work for a lot of ways. But Marvin Runyon, they called him Carvin' Marvin back in the day. So after Carvin' Marvin, on May 16th of 1998, we had William Henderson. I think he went by the name of Bill. I remember Bill. He seemed to be a nice guy. The postmaster that followed Bill Henderson was the longest tenured Postmaster General of my career, and that was John Potter. John came up through the Postal Service, I believe I'm right about that, and he served from 2001 until the next guy took over in 2010. In December 6, 2010, Patrick Donahoe became the Postmaster General. He was the only one that I actually had a picture with. We were at, I think it was Reno, and he was standing around, he was at the National Convention, and so he was standing around having pictures made, and I said, this is the only time I'm probably ever going to get a picture with the PMG, so I went up there and stood by him and had my picture made. He also wrote me a letter. I had done something where I helped a customer get their package to where it was going. They were from another town. I don't even remember the circumstances, but they were very complimentary, and they sent the message to the PMG. He got it. He wrote me a very nice letter. So Patrick Donahoe is who that was. Following Patrick Donahoe, I think was one of the most smartest postmaster generals we've ever had, and that's my opinion. That was Megan Brennan. She came on in February of 2015, and then following Megan was on June 15th, 2020, Louis DeJoy. So Louis DeJoy was the 75th Postmaster General of the United States, and I'm going to tell you something. He came in a rough time. COVID was full-blown. The country shut down in March of 2020. He came in June of 2020. And boy, what a ride he was in for. Before he took this role, though, DeJoy was a successful businessman. He had his own logistics company, and he was a prominent Republican donor. He was the first postmaster since Marvin Runyon that didn't have any prior USPS experience. And so there's about a 20-year gap there. But DeJoy's tenure was marked by significant changes and had significant controversies, including cost-cutting measures and a 10-year plan called Deliver for America. So I wanted to look at some accomplishments today, and I wanted to look at some of his struggles in today's podcast. So let's give him credit on the accomplishments. All right, so he came up with this, him and his board came up with this 10-year strategic plan called Delivering for America. Now, the jury is still out on that. I don't know if it's going to work. I can't figure this out. People a lot smarter than me came up with this Delivering for America plan. There's some growing pains with it. I'm still not convinced it's the right answer, but I don't make those decisions. But he was the Postmaster General that introduced this 10-year strategic plan to get the Postal Service back in the black. As far as his accomplishment and financial improvements, the ongoing financial challenges of the Postal Service is still going on. But in early of 2025, just a few weeks ago, the Postal Service reported a net income for the first quarter of $144 million. And when you compare that to last year at this time, the Postal Service lost $2.1 billion the previous year in that quarter. So that's quite a bit of an improvement right there. Got to give him credit for that. He was also the Postmaster General that was responsible. I don't know if he was responsible, but he was in when the Postal Service Reform Act of 2022 took place. He played a key role in advocating for this legislation, which relieved the Postal Service of the requirement to prepay retiree health care costs. Remember that? The pre-funding was a huge deal back in the day. So he was the Postmaster General when that act finally passed. And then the other accomplishment, the electric vehicle plan. He was initially criticized for having 90% gasoline powered vehicles, but he ordered some electric vehicles and got some additional federal funding because he did that. So that's kind of a deal-making thing there. I don't know if the electric vehicles are going to go. I have no idea, but he was the one that kind of brokered that deal. Now, some of his struggles were delivery delays. His cost-cutting measures, such as eliminating some of the overtime, banning late or additional trucks, it led to major mail delays. And these were very controversial, especially during COVID. And then it was really controversial, if you'll remember, for the presidential election. Oh, he took some major heat for that. He came up with the Local Transportation Optimization Initiative, the LTO, which was an initiative that was aimed to reduce the transportation trips and increase mail transported per trip. There was a lot of empty trucks running back in that day. Criticisms and lawsuits. He faced criticisms and lawsuits from environmentalists. Democratic politicians did not like his original vehicle purchase plan and other things. Some of the things that happened, some notable things that took place in Congress was when he faced the House Oversight Committee in 2024. The date was December 10th, 2024, and the Georgia Republican Representative Rich McCormick, he criticized DeJoy's performance as Postmaster General because the Postmaster General had given himself an A, and this representative took exception to that and said, "You don't deserve an A," and that's when he put his hands over his ears, and he said in the hearing, "You're talking to yourself." Remember that? He also, back in 2024, also faced the Senate Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee, and there he testified about the challenges of the Postal Service and the progress of the Delivering for America plan. And then finally, the House Appropriations Committee, and he discussed his role in the election mail readiness for the upcoming election. So he had some good things, and he had some struggles. And every time he talked to NAPS, he gave us the same speech every time. So what do you think? What are your thoughts on the outgoing PMG? I'd love to hear them. Send those to me at SaturdayCupOfJoe@gmail.com. I will not call your name out, but I just want your thoughts. Just let me know what your thoughts are, and we'll talk about those. And finally, let me end with this. The U.S. Senator from Vermont, Peter Welch, had this to say about the departure of Louis DeJoy. 2 words: good riddance. Okay. Well, that's the end of the first cup. I'm ready to pour that second cup. This March 29th, join us in celebrating a century of trust and a century of service. The Nashville Post Office Credit Union is hosting its 100th annual meeting celebration at the luxurious Sonesta Hotel from 4:30 p.m. to 7 p.m. Mark your calendars for a night of history, festivities, and fun. For more details and updates, like and follow our Facebook page and be a part of this monumental milestone. The Nashville Post Office Credit Union, people helping people since 1925. And for the second cup today, I want to make an announcement to Branch 32. Your regular monthly meeting is taking place on February the 25th. That's Tuesday at 6 p.m. It's going to be held at the Nashville Post Office Credit Union. Those that were at the meeting last month, I challenge you to bring a non-member. Let's introduce a non-member to Branch 32, and let's get them to the meeting on Tuesday night. We have what we like to call eating after the meeting, and I like to say it like eating after the meeting. And I don't know why I like that, but I do. And we have a meal together after the meeting is over. And this month it's going to be at Nectar Urban and Cantina. A little Mexican food action there. So that's going to be great. And for everyone else, the legislative training seminars coming up. You need to be thinking about going to this. It's going to be taking place April 6th through the 9th. It's held at the Crystal Gateway Marriott Hotel, a beautiful hotel. And registration and hotel information is available on the new and improved NAPS website. Go to naps.org, and you will find it there. Thanks for listening to today's Saturday Cup of Joe podcast presented by the Nashville Post Office Credit Union. I always send out a call to action because I want this podcast to be the most popular podcast amongst EAS employees, and I can't do that without you. So please, you know the drill. Subscribe to the podcast, share the podcast, like the podcast. Share it with all your EAS friends. Share it with all your branch. You know what? I haven't heard from a branch in a while. Be sure to send me your branch number wherever you're listening to Saturday Cup of Joe at gmail.com. Really would appreciate that. All right, that's going to do it. I'm Robert Wakefield. And remember, every great weekend starts with a great cup of Joe. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for tuning in to the Saturday Cup of Joe podcast. Please note that the views and opinions expressed in this podcast are solely those of Robert Wakefield and do not necessarily reflect the views of the National Association of Postal Supervisors. We welcome your questions and comments, so send those to SaturdayCupOfJoe@gmail.com.